Hey everyone, Angelo here, homeless filmmaker in LA. Been living in my car for just about 2 years now. Gonna have the anniversary in a little over 2 weeks. I was thinking about this topic lately. It's something I kind of drift in and out of from time to time, thinking about the effect of religious indoctrination and religious faith and religious teaching on people, particularly children, since I went through it when I was a kid. And it almost makes me recoil even thinking about it. The older I get, the further I get from it, the more I can see it in perspective. And even so, the more I see how it's kind of altered me. And that's what this hand signal is. And how important it is to stay, sort of be rid of it, even though it's always gonna, affect me. It affects the whole world. We seem to revere faith. I don't get it. On a certain level, there is I do understand this, which is everybody has particular feelings about certain things. Where the line is as far as, being offensive towards them, or they should, just not mind it if you're disregarding what they like, and when you criticize something or make fun of it. It can be hard to say because everybody has their say about that, obviously. So, yeah, in a sense, okay, respect what people do. They shouldn't be discriminated against as far as I'm concerned, even though I think it's offensive and disgusting. You can put up your churches and mosques and synagogues basically, where you want. And you should be able to go back and forth as you wish. But there is the part where people say, oh, you're, discriminating against my faith by not allowing me to have a theocracy over this country, basically. And there are many different iterations of that, and where it applies, where it doesn't. Oh, does this count as it? Does this not? Or even to the point of saying, oh, you're disrespecting my faith in a way, you're blaspheming against it. It occurred to me the other day, I was thinking about this, that it is it seems to be like an impulse to both aggrandize oneself and give yourself this burst of self-aggrandizement with your faith in a religion, and also debase yourself by wrapping your sense of well-being around this thing that, if it was so powerful, why should it be so fragile? To the point where people are deeply offended if you criticize their faith, satirize it, mock it, whatever the case. Now, I understand that can be wrapped up in a lot of different things, meaning, there's not just religion. There's the political, there's the racial. Certainly, if there was any doubt among anyone today, there is a lot of racist discrimination that happens, and it crosses, it sort of is carried on religious, basically where ethnic lines are drawn, and people will attack religions as a way of attacking a race. There's certainly lots of Islamophobia, lots of anti-Semitism. It's not even necessarily a fine line sometimes, where it's don't impart onto your criticism the xenophobic and racist and I covered them both, right? Xenophobic, racist, those are two big ones. Ideas into your criticism, where your criticism of religion becomes an excuse to basically smear another race. So that can be a troublesome thing. However, in general, it seems like, at least in America and in a lot of the world, not all of the world by any means, not even necessarily in large parts of America, but we seem to revere faith that people have. Oh, you got to respect their faith. Even Democrats were debasing themselves, groveling at their sense of reverence for faith with Trump's Supreme Court nominee Amy Coney Barrett, who appears to be a religious fanatic and I know I certainly dealt with enough of them, Catholics, when I was going to Catholic schools as a kid. And waiting for the plane. When I was mired in it, it didn't seem like extremism at all. It didn't seem like it whatsoever. It seemed normal. And when it seems normal to you, criticism of it seems extreme and seems offensive. Fortunately, I didn't necessarily have that part of my mind that could be so wrapped up in identity in a way. It did in certain ways, definitely, especially in conservatism. But there was a limit to it. Like I never, even when I was a staunch conservative, which was fully grafted onto my, the sort of religious indoctrination I had, as well as the all-pervasive white supremacy that I bought into. That is just kind of everywhere, I never bought into love it or leave it, that kind of thing. I was always like, well, if you criticize America, don't they want to change it at least? Why tell them to leave? I didn't understand the racist underpinnings of that. But we revere faith, and what is faith? It's gullibility. That's what I really can't stand. It's the fact that we're revering something where if you don't accept it, it's like people can be outraged, and I've not want to say anything. When I lost my faith, it was a year before I told anyone, even my parents, because it was just so I couldn't deal with the idea of telling anyone. I had to pretend in a way, and I only left because, unlike, it seems like most Christians, I actually took it seriously, or my mind took it seriously for me, to where my mind was doing the things that sort of the Bible and Christianity sort of impelled in me, which is destroy your life, take no thought for tomorrow, hate your brother, hate whatever. Not that it even means personal hatred, just as in have no connection, no attachment, nothing to anybody. So how can you enjoy anything in life? I mean, it occurred to me, well, but if you're following God, how can you follow other earthly pursuits and pleasures? It was a horrific experience for 15 months dealing with that thought growing deeper and deeper in me, and along with my dissociative disorder, and just weird how if God's so powerful, why would belief in him be unable to be distinguished from the dissociative disorder I had? So I could have maybe, if Christianity was true, still gone to hell, because I didn't really truly have faith. I was following my dissociative disorder, which led me to, this horrific sense that I need to always be destroying my life, and it wasn't conscious. It was my mind was stripping away my identity. And when I talk about faith as gullibility, what I sort of mean is this. Okay, there's no real reason to believe in any of the religions unless you already just like them, you believe them. That's why they want to teach kids when they're young this stuff. If you weren't raised in it, how likely is it that most people would look at it and be like, oh, I've looked at the evidence, I've weighed it both ways, and yes, this is what I've come to the determination of, that this religion's true. Wouldn't happen much. And it's only been recently, sort of the last few years, that I started to understand how life is okay. I don't have to, even though I still always struggle with it, constantly have that judgment in my head that, oh, everything I'm doing is wrong, everything is, what's the word, forfeit, it's all going to be destroyed, it's all for nothing. But what I mean by, gullibility, Christians will, or people of other religions too, I've seen it, and there's many different types of religion as there are people. You can say, well, Islam it teaches these beliefs, but but every person has their own view of it, and depending on their own life. Same with Christianity, Judaism, whatever else other religion. And it occurred to me that, Christians will say, well, what about how like you have faith, right? Because you believe in certain things. Like, don't you believe the sun will come up tomorrow? Don't you believe that someone loves you or whatever? You know, those are two of the ones I've heard before. Don't you believe your car will start? That you know, your job will still be there when you go back tomorrow? Oh, that your spouse loves you? And this is such an easy one to answer. You believe it with some corroboration. In other words, it's not totally outside the realm of reality that your spouse loves you. Or how do you know they're not cheating? Well, here's what, basically, yeah, you go by like what you're corroborated with. You could be wrong. Now here's the difference where a simple, you know, assertion of ideas and sort of like everyday common beliefs change from religious beliefs. A religious belief that your spouse is faithful would be like believing your spouse is faithful even if they admitted to cheating, even if you caught them cheating, even if you saw messages between them and the person they were cheating with that showed they were having an affair, even if your spouse didn't exist, even if your spouse left you, and you'd still say, well, no, you don't understand. My faith is deeper than any of the external circumstances. I just believe. Faith is the reward. You know, it is the fruit. That's the difference, is you would believe even with all the evidence in total what am I thinking? Contraposition, I guess that's, with all the evidence to the contrary, you'd still believe it. Simple example, Noah's flood. You'd say, well, I have faith it happened. But you not only have faith it happened, you have faith it happened even with all the geological evidence that it didn't, the biological evidence, the evidence of civilizations that would have existed around the time of the flood. You know, certain, like the Chinese, I think they were starting like written language around what? I don't know exactly where, a few thousand years ago, but it would have been around the time of Noah's flood if the earth was 6,000 or 10,000 years old. Yeah, the biological evidence, obviously all the speciation, the different species, the geological strata, the geological evidence, the fact that there's no water like anywhere that could flood the whole earth, at least the earth as we know it, but you still believe it. So it's not merely just like a coin toss, like, well, 50-50 could happen. Well, why say that about Christianity? You could say it about Bigfoot. You could say it about underwear gnomes. You could say it about trying to think of something else that people, you know, you could say it about Elvis being alive. At least there was an Elvis. We can be reasonable. Oh, how do you know Elvis existed? You never saw him in person, right? Here's the thing. The other thing about faith. I'm not saying you have to believe in Elvis or else you will be tortured forever and that you'll deserve it and that you actually somehow chose it. Saying we have lots of corroboration as far as we know. We can't be certain. By the way, the weird thing about people saying, well, what about the millions and millions of people that believed in it? So many people read the Bible. So wait, do you put your faith in God or you put your faith in people? That shows the egocentrism of religion, where you just automatically, and this is what I had as a kid, you automatically assume that our brains are truth machines. And not that they're, what in reality they are, is perception machines. We have certain perceptions, flaws, biases. We are susceptible to hallucinations, delusions, illusions. Did I say that one? Hallucinations, delusions, yeah, illusions. Because our brain can only perceive certain things on certain scales, and we don't know how to process certain things. We can't process certain wavelengths of light and sound. We can't see, for instance, the fact that like most of our bodies are empty space. Most of what we know as solid objects are actually empty space. We can only perceive so much. So it's just so self-righteous and masochistic to wrap your self-worth and well-being into this belief. And on top of that, I believe it's abusive to children. It's not necessarily the out-and-out, you know, causing emotional trauma to them, but in all likelihood it could, as it did to me, because I took it seriously. And then what happens when there's that vacuum afterwards, which Christianity is a vacuum of right. There is no right and wrong in it. There is just you will feel lots and lots of pain if you do this, and you will feel lots and lots of pleasure if you do this. That's it. That's not right and wrong. That's, you will like either feel tons of pain or tons of pleasure, ostensibly. I don't know what's pleasurable about the Christian idea of heaven. That horrified me more than anything when I was having my dissociative episode for a year and 3 or 4 months or so, from 18 to 19. Horrifying. But then eventually Christianity was sort of melting away in me, where I was realizing I was getting angry about it. I was like, this isn't matching up to reality. This isn't working. And eventually I snapped out of it, and it was still many, many years before it could start to really flush out of my brain, all that brainwashing, to where I wasn't afraid, oh, am I evil? Did God abandon me? Thinking the devil was trying to possess me. That wasn't just the effect of religion. That was the, like, I don't know what the pressures of the, the religion I went through, and then the dissociative disorder I had, where I thought I was evil and I should just hide and avoid people so I don't infect them with my evil, and I thought I'm just hurtling towards death and I'll die. And maybe I'll go to hell, or maybe, I'll try and at the last second, I don't know. I didn't want to ever face anything in an afterlife either way. But I thought, well, at this rate, I'm just going to hell. Because I thought, well, maybe God just abandoned me and I'm evil. It was such a vacuum of right and wrong, I didn't understand how to live. The day after, because it all happened in one moment, I kind of just snapped out of it after 15 months of pure torture, that Christians, the other asinine thing about them, they say, well, it makes your life so much better. What's wrong? What's the loss if you become a Christian? It was absolute torture for me. It's not just that it was bad suffering, like, well, you wouldn't want to live through a lot of pain. It was that you would not want to live through it. I didn't want to. I thought my life was over at 17 and 18. I thought, this is it. My life had barely begun, and now I am totally losing my free will. As much as free will is a real thing, who knows, but I am losing my ability to choose anything because it is so overwhelmingly, excruciatingly painful to try and do anything pleasurable. It was getting hard to eat, to swallow food, because I thought, oh, God was somehow taking me and purifying me. That's what my religious teacher told me. She's like, oh, this is a good thing, Angelo. This is good. I didn't know what mental health was at the time. I didn't have any clue, because all I knew about it was what I saw in sitcoms, where someone would lie on a couch and talk about their dreams. That's literally it. That's all I knew. And also, if Christianity is real, how come it takes so long to indoctrinate kids into it? Why isn't it as obvious as anything else? But the fact is, okay, I lost my belief, and then it was a vacuum where it was like the next day I woke up and I remember thinking, being scared and thinking, what do I do now? I've had my identity in this thing so long. I never truly believed in it. I sort of thought I did. But now what do I do? And it was terrifying. Eventually the thought kept growing that I'm evil, and I was scared shitless and having these weird delusions that the devil was trying to possess me, and all kinds of horrible thoughts. Thinking I saw pentagrams in my hand, feeling like this horrible rush of like some kind of awful like thing in me when I like compulsively hear the words "Hail Satan" in my head. It was terrifying, and it would be like that, back and forth, switching from dissociated episodes for a year or so, and then back to somewhat normal. And I don't know. It's always a struggle. That's all I can think. I've been struggling with it lately, just being isolated from people and stuff. It's a struggle. Writing helps, and doing exercising and all that, but it's weird how before I thought, well, any self-help is evil because you're exalting yourself. And what good is your life? What good is any pleasure? You should want to destroy your life, annihilate it for God. But Christians wouldn't do that. I saw them living their lives as if there was no God. And that's exactly how the world looks, as if there is no God. And it's so self-important and selfish to say, oh, well, you're offending my faith. And like we should revere the religion of Amy Coney Barrett. Is that her name? Comey Barrett or Coney Barrett? The fact that it's just religious belief, it's just benign. Oh, and by the way, she has the power to affect laws across the whole country, and that would involve torturous conditions for people who are pregnant if they're forced to give birth, if they can't get proper birth control. Just horrifying. And birth control is not just to prevent pregnancy, it's also just to regulate your health. All because of ancient superstitions. And conservative fascism and religion, it all blends together across many different religions. It's not just Christianity. And there's so much of this mythology built in, like well, what would people do if they didn't have God? They would do whatever they wanted, right? Don't they do that anyways? Why are they acting like religion's this iron bar that like you're suspended across and you cannot choose to do anything bad if you believe that you'll be punished in hell forever for doing something wrong? And they can ask, and I've heard Christians ask, why should you care about anything? Why should you value anything? Well, here's the answer. Everyone has to determine that for themselves in each moment. Well, but then you have no reason standard. You can use anything. I'm like, are you saying they don't have to choose that in every moment? Are you saying even Christians don't have to choose in every single moment? Don't you guys say God gave you free will in His image? So you're saying you don't have to choose for yourself how to live. So in other words, this issue of, well, God will right all wrongs, it helps nothing. A serial killer could be saved just by saying a few words, asking forgiveness at the end of his or her life. And a very decent person could go to hell because they masturbated. If Christians really believe this stuff changes you, don't pick the easy stuff like, why not kill, why not steal, which most people don't do. Why not pick something that pretty much everybody does, like masturbate, and say, look at all the Christians who don't masturbate because they fear hell. And look, we can count all the souls that went to heaven. Why don't you do that? Because that would be a lot more, I don't know if it's extraordinary, but at least a lot more of like sort of a challenge to this notion. And even then, there would be nothing supernatural about it,